What's up? So this is from Decolonize the Classroom. That's where I saw it. And it's a necessary read from their friend Bad Takes Pally. You can find them on Instagram. And so this ties into the fact that Jill Stein's Zionist. I'm going to go full screen on you guys for a second. There we are. So post-Zionism, it's about post-Zionism. And you see people like Batya Ungar Sargon, Jill Stein, Daniel Mattei. I don't know who all these people are. You'll see, what's his face? Peter Beinart. So, and it's called "What is Post-Zionism?" And it exposes these liberal Zionists who call themselves post-Zionists. And it says post-Zionist is a stage of identity and political ideology that accepts Zionism as a historical, political, religious, and cultural development for a majority of Jews globally. Instead of rejecting Zionism entirely, post-Zionists seek to move beyond it as an individual choice, viewing it as a historical event rather than something that is inherently tied to current systems of capitalism and imperialism. Post-Zionists validate the quote-unquote Israeli identity to drive the permanence of the colonial entity beyond its nature as a settlement and outpost of the U.S. and forge it as a viable nation. Viability is often driven by constant unnecessary reminders of anti-Semitism projected on moments of Palestinian strife or reaffirming Zionist-invented identities. DEI tactics and tokenization of identity, as perpetuated by neoliberalism in the U.S., are often used by the post-Zionists. In fact, post-Zionists are heavily anchored in U.S. imperialism and also perpetuate reformist agendas both in the U.S. and in occupied 1948 Palestine because they need both the U.S. and the Zionist entity to exist. This also means post-Zionists often perpetuate agendas against other nations that openly denounce U.S. agendas. They are invested in the Palestinian Authority, NGOization, and academic propaganda that furthers normalization. And here we go. Here's Daniel Mattei's tweet. This is the son of Dr. Gabor Mattei. By the way, Gabor Mattei is a liberal Zionist who normalized Combatants for Peace, which is a Zionist NGO. Daniel Mattei says, "Not my point. In that conversation, I explicitly state how I feel about Zionist squatters and my hopes for your future. I want to save you from yourselves." And here's the light bulb. Next to the light bulb, it says, post-Zionists accept the existence of the Zionist entity as permanent and focus on its reformation. I'd actually include Jeffrey Sachs as one of these post-Zionists, who is actually a liberal Zionist. So, yeah. On quote-unquote Israelism, produced by Tikkun Olam Productions, a Zionist-funded film company. I'm wondering if Richard Silverstein's involved in that. The film presents post-Zionists as anti-Zionists while discussing the late awakening of Zionist squatters who finally discover apartheid but overlook settler colonialism as the root cause to which they are direct contributors. The film hosts a spectrum of Zionists and normalizers like the president of FMEP, J Street, IOF soldiers, settlement rabbis, and the ADL. And the Tide Center gave Tikkun Olam Productions Incorporated $150 twice in 2 separate years, and they did that under the guise of equity and human rights and economic empowerment. And if not now, founder Simone Zimmerman, featured in the film, prides herself with building an alternative to the Zionist American institutions like AIPAC by campaigning Bernie Sanders. The film moves the audience in circles back to supporting Zionism by reforming the state to ensure the settlers maintain their status while the future of Palestinians and the resistance is unspoken of. And the person making this post says, "I went to Israelism screening. The director did a Q&A. When I asked about how Americans should support Palestine, they went off on a tangent about how anti-Semitism is real implying I was suggesting it wasn't, or that I am anti-Semitic. I didn't say anything about anti-Semitism. They also said that some folks that worked on the film were liberal Zionists, but they didn't mind. Interesting. So, the quote-unquote Israelism film is a liberal Zionist film. So, the disagreement between right-wing Zionists and post-Zionists who claim to be anti-Zionist is simply the strategy each is willing to take to protect the Zionist entity. Both view each other as risking their home. Should they keep occupying and annexing, they risk the colony's existence. So that's basically the difference between right-wing Zionists and liberal Zionists. And post-Zionism and NGOs, with principles similar to JVP, if not now, is another example of a post-Zionist NGO. Falsely presented in the film as an anti-Zionist organization, and their mission is to equate settlers with Palestinians to create a shared future. Unfortunately, many pro-Palestine NGOs lack grounding in Thawabet and mistakenly believe in the role of settlers in the liberation process, even as they continue their occupation. And here's one of the founders of what's his face of If Not Now, Max Berger. Here's a tweet he made. Kahanists are the Jewish equivalents of Hamas. You can't condemn one without condemning the other. If you don't oppose terrorism, you just oppose Palestinians. So, again, Max Berger is equating Zionist terrorists to Palestinian resistance fighters. Max Berger is one of the founders of If Not Now. Max Berger is a Zionist. Berger says that he has no love for Hamas or any religious nationalist parties, but he loves being Jewish and he loves Jews, even when they're being assholes. So, again, he runs cover for Zionist squatters. He runs cover for settler colonialism. That's what Max Berger does. Max Berger vilifies Hamas, right? Max Berger is a liberal Zionist. And then you have Sophie, and Sophie says, me and my boyfriend were verbally attacked by If Not Now members today for holding these signs outside the Democratic Convention. One of them pointed in my face and told me to go away, called it anti-Semitic, the left sign, and said that they have family in the Zionist entity, and this is fucked up. So again, If Not Now and JVP are both liberal Zionist organizations. And Palestinian representation in the film is anti-resistance and is dehumanizing to resistance fighters. The Palestinian is presented as someone who wants to just live in peace and isn't sitting in bunkers planning the next attack against its occupiers. The Palestinians' desire for peace is stronger than the desire for national liberation and justice. And the film conveniently ignores the majority of Palestinian people being in favor of resistance until liberation, imposing coexistence propaganda suitable and protective of settlers and their identity. Let's take a watch. Not letting me play this. Maybe it's a GCI thing. And then Palestinian representation. So in this clip, I don't know if it'll let me play it. The Palestinian has no understanding of colonialism and is guilt-ridden of the Holocaust. Just as the settler colony exploits the Holocaust to garner emotional support and justifies political existence, the film depicts a Palestinian whose perception of the cause is significantly influenced by Zionist propaganda and ultimately excuses Zionism under the guise of inherited trauma. This dangerous propaganda excuses the Nakba, holds Palestinians accountable for anti-Semitism, and ignores how Zionist anti-Semitism contributed to the creation of settler colony. It's not letting me play it. That's weird. And we must reject the normalization and uphold al-tawabet. And remember, if you're just recently experiencing your awakening, Palestinians have been fighting the struggle for way more than 7 decades, and there's no solution that you can offer to the cause that Palestinians haven't already employed on the ground. Palestinians are accustomed to the violence of liberation, having experienced the most extreme forms of colonial violence from Zionist invaders. We do not tailor a liberation struggle to the comfort of our occupiers. And reject normalization, uphold al-thawabet, so vocally support and believe in the effectiveness of armed struggle for Palestinian liberation, prioritize al-thawabet as a guiding compass to the movement, center the resistance and martyrs as representatives for the Palestinian cause, reject normalization, the manipulative use of identity politics in the struggle, acknowledge that settlers are complicit in sustaining the colony and therefore enemies of the cause. Acknowledge the Zionist entity is a colonial project that poses a threat to the region and must be dismantled. Right? So that's kind of the premises, right? The premises and the background on this. So here's about Jill Stein, because you saw a photo of her on the first slide of that post, right? There's Jill Stein. So why is it that those whose careers are in campaigning and who campaigned in the past for liberal Zionists, Amo Bernie, Omar Zahar, for example, Rami Kanazi, for example, Joe Catron, for example, Aisha Malik, for example, are now dispersed across the Kamala, Stein, and West camps while being awarded financially or through social capital to push the genocide as an election issue? Surely the martyrs did not elevate for November the 5th. Why is it the oppressed are dishonored as a trinket, especially the Palestinians, because our heroism is threatening and can be weakened when tokenized? But it will not be. Palestine is much bigger than an election consisting of talking points from million-dollar studios and watermelon dancing festivals and peace centers that uphold normalization in Oslo. We recall how the Amo propaganda mafia gaslit us and defended the kibbutz Zionist Bernie when they tried to obscure the kibbutz, when Palestinians all know these were Zionist ventures within British imperialism to eventually expand, invade, and massacre Palestinians in 1948 from the heart of every kibbutz. Why would we have voted for the man who is pro-Iron Dome and lives lavishly off of J Street networks? Indeed, it is the weak normalizer who is now invested in this quote-unquote election. We are all aware that Kamala is married to a key Zionist lobbyist, that Jill Stein labeled the resistance fighters as terrorists, and West presents as a radical while reiterating an anti-Iran agenda and an anti-Hamas agenda. So let us pause. When the diasporic talent scouts who hold Zionist citizenship tout a candidate and pull endorsements from the heart of Gaza because they did not need to self-validate, stop yourself and ask, when did a candidate explore a Warsaw hero or a resistance fighter from the Jewish ghettos for a WW2 election campaign? None did. But they exploit black civil rights movements to sway black folks, so they will claim to have picked grapes next to Cesar Chavez to persuade the Latino vote. Enough with the gimmicks. An endorsement can mean many things, like endorsing the American system to eat itself alive. We know the names spray painted on a wall or uttered do not reflect poorly on Gaza. It reflects on the white people who wear the keffiyeh and who protect the settler regime. This was from 2016. And Jill Stein says, I happen to be of Jewish origin, Stein responded, noting that she has relatives living in occupied 1948 Palestine, and because of that, I don't think we are doing the Zionist entity a favor by condoning a policy that makes the Zionist entity very insecure, that makes the Zionist entity the target of hostility from its neighbors, she said. And we'll see the next slide.
I have a special connection to Israel, and I have family members who are living there part-time. But, I don't think we are doing Israel a favor by condoning a policy that makes Israel very insecure, that makes Israel the target of hostility from its neighbors. And in fact, the current, government of Israel, the Netanyahu government, has a sponsor from someone, a casino magnate living here in the U.S., who's funding and supporting a very aggressive and hostile policy. He's not even living there. I don't think that's good for someone to be influencing Israel's policy when they don't have to live with the consequences.
So you see, Jill Stein's a liberal Zionist, bragging about, that she has relatives who are Zionist squatters. And this is not liberation. This is the longevity of the Zionist entity. And when Butch Ware was asked if he condemned liberal Zionists, he went on a blocking spree on social media, ignoring Palestinians while organizing a music festival atop our graves. People will performantly say center Palestinians until it's time to actually center Palestinians. Our role is to agitate this system and never make the normalizer comfortable. They knew they could not buy us here. So they went to Gaza to exploit our people. How do we allow these careers to get close to our heroes? Close the gap, don't fall into it. And then vote Dr. Jill Stein. Maybe we will be able to stop this madness then. In this example, Bisan, who we honor and uplift, says on IG story, vote Dr. Jill Stein, maybe we'll be able to stop this madness, which Stein's campaign immediately posted as an official endorsement. Bisan, like the vast majority of Palestinians, believe in a liberated Palestine and has clearly stated, I do not rely on American politics to make a difference. Where is the consideration that our people are speaking from lived experience over 1 year of genocide? Where is the acknowledgement of recognition that such phrases were never uttered and would never be uttered under normal circumstances? Exploiting our people under severe and oppressive conditions, then using their words in support of a presidential campaign is immoral. And then you have Peter Beinart. Mohammed al-Kurd says Zionism has made the Star of David a racist symbol, just as the Nazi swastikas synonymized swastikas with anti-Semitism. It'd be seen as provocation. So, and then Beinart tries to run cover for the Zionist symbol known as the Star of David, right? Maybe Judaism is a racist cult, And this is what Decolonize the Classroom says. Leaders represent the people of their nations, and such persons become leaders because they are reflective of their people and people's values. When a leader is corrupt, it is because the people are corrupt. This may be challenging to process because we want to believe that the collective is better than that, but our reality tells us otherwise. Yes, the third-party candidates have expressed ending funding towards the Zionist military, but we do not ignore their condemnation of our people or the language they use to strip our people of their autonomy. Our martyrs have not sacrificed so that we can engage in normalization. The end of imperialism and colonialism will not come from politicians on colonized lands. For those appreciate and embrace the teachings of Islam, it's important to understand that Islam does not discourage civic engagement. But what of the civic engagement when it is used to exploit, destroy, and erase? We have much internal work to do as a community of Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims. The levels of normalization are exceedingly high and are poisoning our society in exchange for the illusion of acceptance, often presented in the form of social and financial support. The blood of our martyrs cannot be bought, and our people will not be spoken over. And this is also from Decolonize the Classroom. So this video is probably going to be titled Decolonize the Classroom, Outs Liberal Zionist Jill Stein. So it should be enough that our men are assaulted and are physically and sexually assaulted for resisting against the U.S.-supported Zionist settler colonial regime. It should be enough that our men haven't slept in over a year because they're still pulling bodies out of rubble. It should be enough that our men are in prison where they starve or eat rotten foods for survival as a result of the settler colony fearing for their freedom, while the Arab and Muslim leaders, quote-unquote leaders of the world, feast on elaborately prepared meals. It should be enough that our men are martyred and thrown off the roofs of their home in the impossible effort to rob them of their dignity in death. It should be enough that our men call out Allah in all of their trials, our resistance, and our people begin all their statements by praising Allah, while much of the Muslim diaspora hides to appease audience, shamefully hides to appease audience. So, again, they're exposing liberal Zionist Jill Stein. And Bissan, why was Bissan supporting liberal Zionists? Why was she telling people to vote for liberal Zionist Jill Stein when we knew Jill Stein's a liberal Zionist? Let's take a listen again.
Connection to Israel, and I have family members who are living there part-time. But, I don't think we are doing Israel a favor by condoning a policy that makes Israel very insecure, that makes Israel the target of hostility from its neighbors. And in fact, the current, government of Israel, the Netanyahu government, has a sponsor from someone, a casino magnate living here in the U.S., who's funding and supporting a very aggressive and hostile policy. He's not even living there. I don't think that's good for someone to be influencing Israel's policy when they don't have to live with the consequences.
So, see? Jill Stein, liberal Zionist. So there you go.